The first time I made real gaucho arroz carretero, I expected a simple rice dish. What I didn't expect was that first breath of aroma when the meat hit the hot pan, smoky, deep, and unmistakably Brazilian. For a second, it felt like my kitchen had stretched open into the south of Brazil, where wind runs wide over the pampas and food is meant to carry you through long days. This isn't just rice. Arroz Carreteiro was born out of necessity, back when tropeiros traveled for miles inland, moving cattle and goods, sleeping where the road ended, cooking with what they could carry. They needed something practical, strong, and satisfying. And somehow, that rough and ready meal became a legend, passed along from campfires to family stoves, from dusty routes to Sunday lunches, from the road to the barbecue table. Today I'm taking you with me into that story, but in the easiest way possible, step by step, no stress, with ingredients you can actually find. We're using rice, desalted shredded carne seca, onion, garlic, tomato, fresh herbs, plus salt and pepper. That's it. And yet, when you treat each moment with respect, when you brown the meat properly, build that base with the aromatics, then let the rice soak up all those flavors, you get a dish that tastes like tradition. As we cook, I'll point out the one mistake that ruins the whole texture, and it's surprisingly common: too much water. Arroz Carreteiro isn't meant to be soggy or loose. It should finish dry, fluffy, and full of character, with every grain tasting like the pan it came from. If you enjoy recipes that come with a real cultural backbone, give this video a subtle like so I know to bring more Brazilian classics like this. And tell me in the comments, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? Food, places, traditions, daily life, what do you most want to understand? Now, let's start where the flavor is decided, with the carne seca, the heat, and that first careful browning that sets the tone for everything that comes next. Before we touch the stove, picture where this dish was born. The tropeiros weren't cooking for a photo, they were cooking to keep moving. Dust on their boots, wind cutting across the open fields of the south, and whatever they carried had to last. Dried beef, rice, a few aromatics. Simple things that, together, turn into something that feels like a warm handshake from Brazilian culture. Here's how I like to start, and it's the part people rush. The carne seca needs respect. After desalting it properly, I shred it into rough strands, not too fine, because those little fibers are going to toast and give the whole pot that deep, smoky backbone. When it hits the hot pan, you should hear that confident sizzle, not a timid hiss. If it's quiet, the pan isn't ready. Let the meat sit for a moment. Don't stir right away. Browning is flavor, and in Arroz Carreteiro, flavor is the whole point. Once the edges turn golden and the kitchen starts smelling like barbecue day, I bring in the onion. It softens, goes glossy, and starts loosening the browned bits from the bottom. Then garlic, quick and careful, just until it turns fragrant. The tomato comes next, and you'll notice the mood of the pan change. It gets juicier, more forgiving, like it's building a sauce without becoming a stew. This is where I add fresh herbs, and it instantly makes the dish feel alive, not heavy. If you're enjoying this kind of recipe that carries a piece of Brazil with it, go ahead and give the video a like. And tell me in the comments, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? Food, music, traditions, the regions, what do you want to understand better? Now comes the move that makes it truly carreteiro: the rice goes in before the water. I stir it into the meat and aromatics so every grain gets coated, almost like it's being introduced to the story it's about to tell. Salt and pepper, measured with care, because the beef already brings its own character. And then, hot water, just enough to cook, never enough to drown. In the next moment, I'll show you the exact visual cue I use so the rice comes out dry, loose, and proud instead of soggy. And that's where most people miss it. Now that the carne seca is already desalted and shredded, this is the moment that turns a rice with meat into real arroz carreteiro. I heat the pan until it feels alive, and then I add the meat with just a touch of oil, nothing fancy. You want contact, you want sizzle, you want those browned edges that smell a little smoky and a little sweet. At first it looks dry and stubborn, but stay with it. I'm not rushing, I'm listening. When the meat starts to pop and deepen in color, it's telling you the flavor is waking up. And here's something people don't always expect: I let it sit. Not constantly stirring. Just giving it a chance to caramelize. Those tiny brown bits on the bottom are pure tradition, the kind of taste that makes you think of open roads, dusty boots, and a simple meal that had to be strong enough for the day. When it's beautifully golden, I bring in the onion. The sound changes immediately, like the pan exhales. The onion softens, gets glossy, and starts to carry that beefy perfume through the kitchen. Then garlic goes in quickly, because garlic is a jealous ingredient. If it burns, it turns bitter and ruins the calm. I stir just until it smells warm and inviting, and then I add the tomato. You'll see it melt into the base, turning everything slightly saucy, catching all those brown bits and pulling them back into the dish. At this point I season with salt and black pepper, but carefully. Carne seca always has a personality, even after desalting, so I taste, adjust, and taste again. Fresh herbs go in last for brightness, and suddenly it's not just hearty, it's alive. If you're enjoying this kind of Brazilian kitchen story, take a second to like the video, just so I know you want more recipes like this. And tell me in the comments, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? Now comes the step that defines the texture, when the rice hits the pan and starts drinking up all that flavor before we add the hot water. And I'll show you exactly how much is enough, so it doesn't turn soggy. If you like this style, consider subscribing, because the next minutes are where Arroz Carreteiro truly becomes gaucho. Now the carne seca is already desalted and shredded, and this is where Arroz Carreteiro stops being just rice and starts becoming that legendary, gaucho comfort food. I bring the pot up to a steady heat and let the meat hit the bottom first, no rush. Listen for that sharper sizzle. At the beginning it looks pale and a little shy, but give it time and it starts to toast. The edges turn golden brown, the smell gets deeper, almost smoky, like a memory of a campfire carried into the kitchen. And here's the moment a lot of people skip: I let it brown properly before I add anything wet. That caramelization is flavor. When it's where I want it, I push the meat to the side and go in with onion. It softens fast, picking up all the little brown bits stuck to the pot. Garlic follows, just long enough to perfume everything, then tomato to loosen the bottom and bring a gentle sweetness. You can see the base turning into a rich, rustic mixture, like it was made for travel and long days. I season simply, salt only if it still needs it, because carne seca can surprise you, then black pepper. Fresh herbs go in now too, and the kitchen instantly feels more alive, brightening that savory backbone. Then the rice. I pour it in and stir until every grain is coated, almost glossy, as if the rice is being introduced to the story before it cooks. This step matters more than people think, because it helps the grains stay separate later. Now I add hot water, not cold, and I'm careful with the amount. If there's one mistake that ruins Arroz Carreteiro, it's drowning it. This isn't risotto and it's not meant to be creamy. We want fluffy, dry rice with bites of meat in every forkful. Once the water goes in, I lower the heat, cover, and let time do what time does. And while it simmers, tell me in the comments, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? Food, traditions, the regions, the music, the language? In a few minutes we're going to lift that lid, check the texture, and finish it the way the gauchos would be proud of. If you want more Brazilian classics made simple and authentic, subscribe and stay with me for the final touches. Now that the rice has had a minute to toast and pick up all that flavor from the pot, this is the moment where Arroz Carreteiro can either become legendary, or turn into a sad, soggy mess. I keep the heat steady and I add hot water, not cold. You can actually hear it when it hits the bottom, that quick, confident sizzle, like the pot is saying, yes, that's it. I'm watching the level closely. I'm not trying to drown the rice. I just want enough water to cook it through while keeping those grains separate. That's the number one mistake people make at home: too much water because they're afraid it'll burn. But if you respect the heat and the timing, it won't burn, and the texture stays exactly how it should be. I give it one gentle stir, just once, to make sure nothing is stuck, and then I stop touching it. Lid on. And here's where the kitchen changes pace. The steam starts building, carrying the deep carne seca aroma mixed with onion and garlic, and suddenly it feels like you're standing near a fire out on open land, with a meal that has a purpose. You can almost picture the tropeiros, tired from the road, stretching their hands toward the warmth, waiting for something simple that actually feeds you. After a few minutes, I lift the lid quickly. The surface is bubbling, but it's not swimming. That's what I want. I taste just a tiny bit of the broth for salt, because carne seca can surprise you even after desalting. A touch of black pepper goes in, and then tomato follows, not too early, so it keeps its freshness instead of disappearing into the pot. The color shifts, from brown and gold to something warmer, more alive. When the water drops to little craters on the surface, I lower the heat and let it finish drying. The final sound is my favorite, that soft, tight simmer turning into a quiet crackle. If you're enjoying this kind of Brazilian cooking, leave a like, and tell me in the comments, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? Because once we finish this pot, the final touch is what makes it feel truly gaucho, and you're going to want to see it. And that's the moment I love most. You lift the lid, the steam rolls up, and the rice is dry and fluffy, not wet, not sticky. Each grain is separate, carrying that deep, smoky flavor from the carne seca, and you can actually see the little bits of brown meat tucked through the pot like treasure. This is where Arroz Carreteiro stops being just rice and becomes a story you can taste. I always give it one last gentle stir, almost like you're respecting the work it took to get here. Then I turn off the heat and let it rest for a couple of minutes. That pause matters. It finishes the cooking without drowning the rice, and it lets the flavors settle into something rounded and comforting. When I add the fresh herbs at the end, the whole kitchen changes in seconds, like a breeze coming through an open window after a long day. If you've never tried it, this is the kind of dish that feels like it was made to be shared. You can hear the sound of forks against plates, the quiet approval after the first bite, and that inevitable comment someone makes, "This tastes like real food." And it does. It's practical, honest, and full of intention, the way the tropeiros needed it to be when they traveled for days. No waste, no fuss, just enough strength and flavor to keep going. And remember the big secret that saves the texture: go easy on the water. Hot water, just enough to cook the rice, and then let time and heat do their job. If you respect that balance, you'll get the Arroz Carreteiro that gauchos are proud of, the one you'll see next to fire and grill smoke at a Brazilian barbecue. If this recipe helped you, leave a like so I know to bring more traditional Brazilian dishes like this one. Now tell me in the comments, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? And if you want more step-by-step recipes, culture, and little details that make all the difference, subscribe and come cook with me again.